A Japanese woman quietly slides open the wooden door of a small neighborhood cafe just as the morning rain begins to fall. She chooses the table beside the window, places her umbrella neatly against the wall, and wraps both hands around a steaming cup of green tea. She doesn't reach for her phone. She doesn't search the room for someone she knows. She doesn't seem to be waiting for anyone at all. Instead, she watches the raindrops trace slow lines across the glass, her expression calm, almost weightless, as if these few silent moments are the most valuable part of her entire day. To many people in the West, that scene feels almost impossible to understand. Leave someone alone in a cafe for 10 minutes without a phone, a laptop, or a conversation, and discomfort begins to appear. The silence becomes awkward. The mind starts asking uncomfortable questions. Do people think I'm lonely? Do I look like I have no friends? Before long, the hand reaches instinctively for a phone, not because there is an urgent message, but because being seen alone somehow feels like failure. But what if that feeling isn't natural? What if it is something our brains have quietly learned over years of constant stimulation? Every notification delivers a small burst of dopamine, encouraging us to seek the next distraction before we have time to hear our own thoughts. At the same time, chronic stress keeps cortisol levels elevated, making silence feel unfamiliar instead of restorative. Gradually, we stop fearing loneliness itself and begin fearing the absence of noise. The greatest discomfort is no longer being disconnected from other people. It is being left alone with ourselves. Yet millions of Japanese people have learned something entirely different. They have transformed solitude from a sign of isolation into a daily practice of emotional renewal. Through simple habits and timeless philosophies, they have discovered that peace is not found by escaping silence, but by learning how to live comfortably inside it. In this video, we'll explore 5 Japanese habits that quietly reshape the relationship between solitude and happiness. But I encourage you to stay until habit number 4 because it reveals the hidden mistake that keeps millions of people trapped in loneliness even when they are surrounded by others. And habit number 5 may completely change the way you see your quiet moments for the rest of your life. Let's begin with the first habit, because this is where everything changes. Japanese people do not treat being alone as something that needs to be explained. In many Western cultures, however, spending time alone often feels like a silent confession. A person eating alone in a restaurant is quickly assumed to be lonely. Someone traveling alone is often asked, "Where is everyone else?" Without realizing it, we have learned to associate solitude with rejection. In Japan, the mindset is remarkably different. Being alone is not viewed as a sign that something is missing. It is seen as a natural part of a balanced life. A quiet meal, a peaceful walk, or an afternoon spent alone is not considered unusual. It is simply time reserved for reconnecting with yourself. The deeper reason lies in how the brain responds to constant stimulation. Every notification, conversation, and distraction triggers another small release of dopamine, training us to seek continuous external rewards. Over time, the mind becomes uncomfortable with stillness, even though it desperately needs it. The result is a restless brain that struggles to focus and recover. Japanese culture gently interrupts this cycle. Instead of escaping silence, people learn to sit with it. They discover that peace is not found by adding more noise, but by removing unnecessary distractions. You can begin practicing this habit today. Choose one everyday activity, a morning coffee, a short walk, or lunch, and experience it completely alone. Leave your phone in your pocket. Resist the urge to fill every quiet second. At first, the silence may feel unfamiliar, but soon you'll notice something unexpected. The discomfort was never caused by being alone. It was caused by forgetting how to enjoy your own company. But learning to enjoy your own company is only the beginning. The second habit is learning to stop using noise as emotional protection. In many Western households, silence is treated like an empty space that must be filled. The television stays on even when no one is watching. Music plays during every meal, The phone appears the moment a conversation ends. We often call this relaxation, but psychologically it can become avoidance. Constant stimulation prevents us from noticing what we actually feel. The Japanese approach is quieter. They often allow pauses to remain pauses. A silent train ride, a slow meal, or a walk without conversation is not automatically uncomfortable. This reflects the idea of the meaningful space between sounds, objects, and moments. In psychology, these pauses help reduce cognitive overload. When the brain is no longer forced to process endless input, attention begins to recover and emotions become easier to understand. The shift is simple, but not always easy. Choose one part of your day and remove unnecessary sound. Eat breakfast without a screen. Walk without headphones. Sit for 5 minutes before checking messages. Do not force yourself to feel peaceful. Simply notice what appears. And once the noise disappears, you begin to see the third habit more clearly. Peace is not created by silence alone, but by the way you design your environment. The third habit is to create spaces that make solitude feel natural instead of shameful. In many Western settings, public spaces are designed around groups. Large tables, shared seating, and social activity quietly send the message that being alone is unusual. As a result, people often hide behind a phone or laptop to avoid appearing lonely. The mistake is not simply feeling self-conscious. It is allowing the environment to decide how you should feel about yourself. Japan often takes a different approach. Small booths, single seats, quiet corners, and private dining spaces make room for one person without treating them as an exception. This matters because human behavior is strongly shaped by environmental cues. Psychology shows that when a space feels safe and socially accepted, the nervous system becomes less defensive. The person no longer has to perform, explain, or protect themselves from imagined judgment. You can apply this principle at home. Create one small place that belongs only to quiet. It might be a chair near a window, a clean corner, or a simple table without screens. Keep it uncluttered. Use it for tea reflection or a few slow breaths. Over time, the space becomes a signal. Your brain begins to associate it with calm rather than isolation. But the next habit goes even deeper, because sometimes the most difficult environment to change is not the room around you. It is the story inside your mind. But creating a peaceful space around you is only part of the story. The next habit is far more difficult because it asks you to change something invisible. Most people don't actually fear being alone. They fear what being alone seems to say about them. In many Western cultures, solitude quietly became a social signal. A person dining alone is often assumed to be lonely. Someone traveling alone is asked if their friends canceled. Even taking yourself to a movie can feel strangely uncomfortable. Without realizing it, we've merged two completely different ideas into one: being alone and being unwanted. Japanese culture rarely makes that connection. Being alone is simply another way of existing. It doesn't require an explanation. It doesn't reduce your value. It doesn't make you appear incomplete. Psychologists have long observed that social rejection activates many of the same brain regions involved in physical pain. The problem isn't solitude itself. The pain comes from the meaning we attach to it. If your brain believes being alone means you're failing socially, every quiet moment begins to feel like evidence against your worth. The shift begins with changing that story. The next time you find yourself alone, resist judging the moment. Instead of asking, "What will people think of me?" ask a different question. What can I finally hear now that the world has become quiet? That single change may feel small, but it prepares you for perhaps the most transformative habit of all. Because once you stop fearing solitude, you discover that silence is not empty. It is speaking, and what it says may surprise you. Most of us spend our entire lives trying to escape our own thoughts. We stay busy, keep scrolling, or search for another conversation because silence feels uncomfortable. We assume that if our minds become quiet, nothing interesting will happen. The Japanese have discovered the opposite. Silence is not the absence of life. It is where life becomes easier to understand. Modern neuroscience offers an explanation. When the brain is no longer focused on constant external stimulation, it activates what researchers call the default mode network. During these quiet moments, the mind begins organizing memories, processing emotions, solving problems, and strengthening self-awareness. What appears to be doing nothing is actually some of the brain's most important work. This is why moments of intentional stillness are so valuable. They are not wasted time. They are mental recovery. The Japanese don't wait until they feel overwhelmed to become quiet. They create small pockets of silence every day, a slow cup of tea, a peaceful walk a few minutes, looking out a window. These simple rituals allow the mind to settle before stress has a chance to take over. You can begin with just 10 minutes today. No phone, no music, not television. Simply sit with your thoughts without trying to change them. At first, your mind may feel restless. Then, almost without noticing, something begins to soften. And that's when you'll understand the final lesson. The greatest peace was never hidden in Japan. It has been waiting inside you all along. In the end, the Japanese approach to solitude is not really about spending more time alone. It is about changing the meaning of that time. Through Ma, we learn that empty space is not useless. It gives the mind room to breathe. Through intentional silence, we begin to understand that peace does not always come from adding something new. Sometimes it comes from removing the noise that no longer serves us. And through small, disciplined changes, we discover something even more important. You do not need to redesign your entire life to feel calmer. You do not need to disappear from the world, reject connection, or become a different person. The goal is not isolation. The goal is balance. It is learning to be with others without losing yourself, and learning to be alone without feeling incomplete. So do not try to practice every habit at once. Choose one small action. Tonight, place your phone in another room and sit quietly for just 5 minutes. No music, no scrolling, no pressure to meditate perfectly. Simply notice your breathing, the sounds around you, and the thoughts that rise and pass. That is enough. This small act may seem almost meaningless, but this is how real change often begins. Quietly, gently. One intentional moment at a time. Then ask yourself a simple question. When you are no longer distracted, does being alone feel empty, or does it finally feel honest? Tell me your answer in the comments. I read every one. And if this video gave you a different way to understand solitude, share it with someone who is always surrounded by noise but still feels alone. You may help them discover that silence is not something to fear. It may be the place where they finally return to themselves. I'll see you in the next one.